All right, so straight up, the F-47 is rising from the flames right now. This thing looks built to dominate, and the recent release is this new patch from the Systems Management Office of the F-47. This thing is a 6th-gen fighter that's designed to slip through radar nets, hit Mach 2 plus, and run drone swarms that could turn the tide in any fight. And this new patch is epic. It shows the Phoenix. So is the moniker for this thing gonna be the F-47 Phoenix? I thought it might be the F-47 Giga Chad, but apparently the F-47 Phoenix is winning the fight. And there is a lot of hints about what the Phoenix might be up to, how it was designed, and what its future holds from this patch. So I'm gonna be breaking down this full patch, so stay to the end of the video for that. And then check out this footage. This has been going around online. It's supposedly an F-47 flying around the strip in Las Vegas, but to me, if the Air Force was actually gonna release something like this, they would do it during the daytime so there would be clearer images, or they would just have a few photographs of this thing taken as it's flying around. So to me, this is DCS, albeit how epic would it be? I want this to be real. This looks like DCS to me, and I think it's very funny that it's going around the internet, but we're gonna be breaking down more footage like this later in the video. And this is the F-22's Air. This was engineered for the Pacific Ocean, where distances are massive, brutal swaths of ocean, and then countering J-20s and J-50s out of China. I've done a full J-50 video. I'll link to that in the description so you can watch that after this. I really hope the canards don't make it into the final product, but who knows? To me, if you have platforms like that, like the canards, and like those platforms in front of the engine, you run the risk of reducing the stealth signature. And to me, the stealth signature of the F-47 is everything. Its range and its stealth, to me, is the most important part. This rendering looks a little bit like a mini SR-71, but I don't think you need this jet to go that fast. If you kept this thing somewhere around Mach 2.5 as a top limit, I think you get the best combo of having a massive weapons platform while not making it go so fast that it can be seen very easily with infrared sensors. You want to keep the speed to a point where it doesn't highlight this thing, because when you're going into enemy airspace, you don't want to stand out like a you-know-what in sweatpants. That wouldn't be good for anybody. So let's talk about the routes, and that's some of the routes that we're actually potentially seeing unveiled in the patch. So the Next Generation Air Dominance program, it kicked off back in 2014 under DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, and that's your first acronym. You're welcome. The mission of that was clear: replace the F-22 that's been carrying the load since the 1990s. But adversaries aren't standing still. Like we talked about, the J-36, the J-50, and many more J-20s are pouring out of China. And then Russia's got the Su-57, as well as some renderings of some 6th generation aircraft that they're saying can carry hypersonic weapons. But by 2019, Boeing and Lockheed had flown secret demonstrator, those X-planes, and they'd racked up multiple test hours at places like Area 51 to prove that they could crack and penetrate air defenses from other nations. But even more than that, they were likely proving that these jets could link up and sync up with uncrewed wingmen, those CCAs. But then in 2024, the program got hit hard. Cost exploded. Projections put each F-47 at over $300 million. That's triple the F-35's price tag. The Pentagon slammed the brakes for a full review, and this was almost the death of the program. They did an internal review. Is this beast worth it, or should we just switch fully to drones? But an internal Air Force study came back screaming, yes, we need the NGAD for air superiority in the Pacific, and we need this thing to be able to connect and run the 1,000 plus CCAs that are slated for the Air Force in the near future. So to me, the fact that Boeing got this contract, it wasn't luck. Likely they did an incredibly good job with their 2019 demonstrator at Area 51. We've seen some images of that potential aircraft, but that likely outpaced the field in a few different ways, likely proving that long-range stealth with a large combat radius was a big part of that package, and platform was likely a lot of the testing to prove that this thing could operate in the massive swaths of ocean in the Pacific. That's where the US bases are thin, and China's got anti-access bubbles all across that. They've built bases out of reefs, so the reefs have been structured and created to be a runway for China's next 6th generation jets. So with that in mind, and seeing that that NGAD demonstrator could actually compete and contest that airspace, that likely gave the nod to Boeing. But even more than that, I think the fact that Boeing proved that their jet could sync up with CCAs, potentially even working hand in hand with Anduril's Fury or other CCAs, real-time airborne, showing the different generals that, hey, this jet is the actual quarterback of the skies. To me, that's probably the big part of what won the contract for Boeing. But now let's talk about that patch that everyone is buzzing about. To me, this is a huge spark. So this patch was actually released on X in early September of 2025, and Air Combat Command confirmed that it's an authentic but early stage F-47 Systems Management Office patch. And to me, the details of this thing scream the intent. So you've got that centerpiece, that phoenix rising from the ashes, all fire and rebirth that fits the program's near cancellation in 2024 and its comeback. And then the motto in Latin, Superamus, Perstamus, Latimus. We overcome, we persist, and we rejoice. That white text is arced underneath that bird, and then you've got ACC, Air Combat Command, F-47 SMO, Systems Management Office, that is stamped to the top left, and then you've got a cryptic FBC on the right. What could that FBC actually mean? Let's talk about it. F-47 Battle Command could be one option, and that would nod to the jet's role in orchestrating Pacific operations from deep inside the shadows, or from the brink comeback would be a kind of cool moniker to have on there as well, or maybe even Fierce Badass Chad. So even better than the Giga Chad, the F-47 is basically saying, we're the Fierce Badass Chad. What you got, Giga Chad? You got nothing on us. But FBC, from the brink comeback, that could be a sly wink at the NJAD's program potential cancellation and then their resurrection. And that story is interesting because it was saved from potentially just becoming another scrap of metal in DARPA's junkyard. And now let's look at the different stars around. So you've got 6 stars around that phoenix. So does that mean that you've got 6 CCAs? Maybe those stand for Anduril's Fury or other CCAs that were worked into the testing of the actual F-47. 6 of them for one F-47. Maybe that's the combat configuration that the standard loadout is. You've got 6 drone wingmen to one F-47. And then we see the 3 arrows on the left-hand side. So does that mean that the normal combat formation of the F-47 could potentially be 3? Because a combat formation right now in the Air Force is usually 4. So maybe because this thing is such a force multiplied aircraft, having 3 could be the new combat configuration. And then underneath the Phoenix, you've got 6 triangles and diamonds as well. So does that mean there were 6 demonstrators that were up for actually getting this contract? And then the Phoenix is actually the one that rose from the ashes. And the fact that the wings look like Max Afterburners, they look like a blazing fury of the Phoenix. This means to me that this thing can probably super cruise without afterburners, but then it's got the ability to turn on the afterburners and blow away the competition. And then maybe one of the most interesting parts of the patch is that little white path on the right hand side. Oh, what is that little white path? Oh, don't worry about that little guy. That's just China's eastern coast, and that is dead on if this thing is built for the Pacific ops that we've heard of. And China has released different variants of patches with their J-36 and their J-50, showing that they're there to slay the B-21. So now this F-47 patch is coming in and saying, oh yeah, you want to pick on the B-21? Well, the F-47 is the B-21's big brother, and we've got something to say about that, China. And I'm sure Chinese intel services are glued to patches like this, trying to get hints about what the F-47 could be doing. Good luck trying to pry out any other secrets besides just kind of what we've talked about so far. But it's cool because to me, this patch isn't just fluff. It's a mission statement for cracking into the PLAF, the People's Liberation Army Air Force, and striking deep within the South China Sea if needed. Now let's do a deep dive on the F-47's design. So let's break into the bones of what's actually going on. To me, the F-47 is stealth first. That means it's all aspects stealth. So from all different directions, you would want it to be stealthy, not just from one particular quadrant, and you would want it to vanish from radar and infrared sensors. So to me, having the radar cross-section incredibly small, likely smaller than a marble, is likely the main principle and tenet of the F-47. And we can see on the exhaust that it's likely going to be masked to kill any type of heat-seeking missiles or heat-seeking systems that could be trying to track it down. And those flames on the patch could also hint at spectral jamming technology that could jam across multiple different wavelengths throughout the spectrum to basically shut down enemy radars in fighter jets and in any type of SAM system, those surface-to-air missile radar trackers that could be trying to hunt and track down the F-47. Those flames could be saying, hey, we can fry those radars before they have any chance of seeing us. And in lots of the different renderings and graphics out there, we can see that this thing doesn't likely have vertical tails. So that's just another nod to the fact that stealth tech is is likely the priority behind this thing, as opposed to the incredible maneuverability that we see in the F-22. This could be more of a long-distance strike platform that isn't made for dogfighting as much as other platforms, or it could have movable flight control systems that could change and adapt as it gets into a dogfight. That's something that's yet to be seen. To me, it's like Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible, just ghosting through any type of traps that are tried to be set for him. It's just like no competition. This thing just swings through like it's the big swing and you know what. And performance-wise, the adaptive cycle engines from Pratt & Whitney or even potentially GE, those could flip modes on the fly. So think about it being wildly efficient for a 1,000 nautical mile plus combat radius. That's even 25% beyond the F-22s. And then whenever needed, boom, punching into Max Afterburner and get a Mach 2 plus burn for a dash that tops 1,500 miles per hour. That could be something you need if you're being scrambled and you're trying to target any massive threats like bombers coming in to strike targets in Taiwan. And with those massive engines, you're gonna need a power surplus to potentially feed directed energy weapons or to keep up with the different communication systems that are gonna be needed to go to those CCAs. Maybe it's laser communications, but directed energy weapons are likely gonna be a massive drain on the energy systems of the F-47, so you have to have next level engines. And the F-47 looks like it'll be nuclear capable as well, so that means it could sling B-61s and it could be massive deterrence in the Pacific where China knows there's a platform that could be carrying these massive nuclear weapons. And then we gotta talk about the brain. The brain's the most important part, right? When you're picking a girlfriend or boyfriend or a spouse, you want the brain to be incredibly strong. And to me, the F-47 would be a great choice for your next partner because the brain in this thing is run by open architecture AI, and that fuses data from onboard sensors and can actually collect it from the CCA drones around it that are pumping information and situational awareness back to the pilot. So to me, this pilot is not necessarily flying solo because they're directing a swarm. So they've got their eyes on massive touch screens watching their drones go out and do their bidding. So take Anduril's Fury for example. This autonomous fighter drone's already in ground testing, and likely it's built to tag team with the F-47 on airstrikes, on ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, or even electronic warfare, which actually might be the place where the Fury shines the most. And that could all be orchestrated and pumped through Anduril's Lattice system and then back into the F-47 to increase situational awareness even more. Think about a combat formation of F-47. So you've got one F-47, you've got 6 Anduril Fury drones, and then you put up 3 F-47s, and now you've got 18 Anduril Furies. You could do surgical precision strikes, and you'd have the numbers behind you to back all that up. And to put it in perspective, while the F-22 tops out at Mach 2.25, it's got a 600 nautical mile combat radius, and it's only really stealthy in the front quadrant. The Phoenix could crank that up, Mach 2 plus, so you're going stretches of over 1,000 nautical miles and being invisible in all the different quadrants as you're synced in to those CCA drone swarms. All that is worth the $300 million a pop price tag, in my opinion. You can let me know what you think below, but all that combat capability and needing less of these because now you're getting force multiplication with all the CCAs. To me, the $300 million price tag doesn't scare me as much now, knowing that it's likely going to sync up with all these drones. It's just $300 million, no big deal. You know, the F-47 program's like, you get an F-47, you get an F-47, you get an F-47. That'd make Oprah really proud. But the Chief of Staff of the Air Force has come out and said that the team is committed to the first flight in 2028 before President Trump's term wraps up. So that means you could be fielding actual combat squadrons by the 2030s, and that would help counter the evolving threats of China. But with that $300 million price tag, can we get a button that's like the anger button and essentially drops all your bombs on one target? We could call it the go limp button. You basically hit that button, all your bombs come off, and you drop a load that makes the competition go limp. Now let's talk about the 3 most likely first combat runs for the F-47. These are likely going to be in the Pacific, where this thing was actually built for. So scenario number 1, as you could guess, the Taiwan Straits. Sirens are wailing at Andersen Air Force Base on Guam. It's 0300 hours. You're Blaze 1. You're an F-47 pilot, and you're strapping in as China's carriers muscle themselves into the Straits. J-20s and drones launch from that Chinese carrier, and you throttle up in your F-47's adaptive captive engines, you hear them hum, and you're devouring hundreds of miles of ocean to get to the fight. You bring in your Anduril Fury drones, you link to them seamlessly, and you shoot them ahead to try to take down any of the Chinese drones. You see SAMs launch from China's mainland in the distance, but your F-47 just shrugs them off and remains invisible. You release hypersonic weapons from your F-47 weapons base, and you have hundreds of miles of standoff distance, and you watch as these hypersonic weapons slam into the carrier. You continue to target your Anduril Fury drones into the Chinese drones and J-20s, and you see lots of the Chinese fighters turn around. You turn around as well, still tasking your CCAs to handle your dirty work. Scenario number 2, it's dawn over the South China Sea. You're the flight lead in another F-47. J-20s circle strategic parts of the South China Sea, and they're escorting bomb-laden H-6s out of China, trying to claim multiple reef bases. Your F-47 rips off the tarmac and you accelerate to Mach 2+. Your tailless beast is slicing through the haze. The stealth is shrugging off any of China's pings from their SAM systems. You turn on your directed energy weapons and you vaporize multiple Chinese drones and J-20s. The bombers see the J-20s fall into the ocean and turn into fish food. The bomber pilots, being smarter than your average bear, decide they don't want to be fish food and they turn around as well. But you're ready. Directed energy weapons are also on the Anduril Fury, and you're ready for those bombers. As soon as they turn around, you're going to burn a hole right through their fuselage. So who knows? Will we see these scenarios in the South China Sea anytime soon? The patch that we've seen hints that we could see this F-47 in combat sooner than we anticipated. And it's said right now that the first F-47 is actually in production. It's being built, so we're going to see this F-47 in real life sooner than we all think, and I'll keep you posted as the situation develops. What do you think about this new F-47 patch? What do you think it means for the program? And do you think we have an F-47 Phoenix on our hands as the official moniker for the F-47? Let me know in the comments below. And hey, the best compliment you can give me is just watch this video right here. When you watch this video right here, it helps the channel grow exponentially, and I would greatly appreciate it. So I'll see you on this video right here. It says Ryan, also known as Max Afterburner, also known as the fighter pilot next door, signing off.